On October 9th, 2004, in beloved Morocco, specifically in the capital Rabat, the police received a report from a Moroccan family stating that their son Murad had suddenly disappeared. Police teams began searching for him after receiving the report, but no trace of the boy was found. After several days of searching, Murad was found murdered in an abandoned house, where his hands were tied with a rope, and there was a deep wound that appeared to be caused by a sharp tool, which led to the severing of the vein and his death. In addition, investigators discovered something strange at the crime scene, which was a terrifying writing left by someone on the room's mirror. Follow me until the end to discover the details of this exciting story. Before I start telling the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notifications button to receive exclusive content. On October 9th, 2004, specifically in Rabat, and almost 2 days after discovering the first body of the young man named Murad in the abandoned house, the police received a second report about the death of a young man named Issam al-Suwaidi. They found him dead in a popular cafe, and the cause of death was very strange. The reason was that he drank a large amount of poison in a cup of tea. But the most important thing that caught the investigators' attention was the writing they found on the bathroom mirror in the cafe, which shocked the police when they saw it. It read, 2 out of 5. This clearly indicated that the first and second crimes were committed by the same person. This increased the police's confusion, so they brought in a large group of eyewitnesses who were in the cafe at the time of the crime and began questioning them to find out anything about the person who did it. But when they asked them, everyone said that the situation was normal and there was nothing strange until Issam suddenly started screaming while sitting in the cafe, and before anyone could intervene to help him, the man had died. After taking his body to the forensic department and issuing a report on the cause of death, it was found that Issam died due to a large dose of poison. They began questioning the cafe workers. Perhaps one of them had put the poison, but they reached no conclusion, and there was no evidence against anyone. Here, they confirmed that they were dealing with a dangerous and professional person, and they began planning how to chase him. It was clear that this person was steps ahead of them because they received the third report from a group of residents who witnessed and said they saw a fire in a car in the Al Harhoura forest area. When they went to the place, they found the car indeed burned with a person inside. They tried to save the young man inside the car, but the last moments were not enough, which completely changed the police's calculations. They began deploying their security personnel quickly everywhere to find the other 2 people before they were killed. But the killer was much faster than them, because during the search, they found the body of one of them, named Khalid al-Matouk, found dead in his car. For the 4th time, the police found the common thing between all these crimes, which was the writing left by the killer. They found written on the car window 4 out of 5, and the killer used pepper spray in this crime to paralyze his victim before killing him, the same as what happened with Murad and Samir. The investigators intensified their efforts to catch this criminal who ended the lives of all these people because the matter became very serious, and they were dealing with a serial killer. But despite that, they did not reach any concrete evidence, especially since we are talking about the year 2004. The investigators said that Samir confessed that he, the victims who died, another person named Khalid al-Matoub, and a 5th person had kidnapped a girl who was walking in the street in the city of Rabat. They took her by car and went to an abandoned house in the forest, the same house where they found the body of the first victim, Murad. They locked the girl in a room in this house for a certain period. When the police heard his confession, they charged him with kidnapping and assault, but he died in the hospital 2 days later from burns. Therefore, the police have not yet reached the killer. In the police's attempt to solve this case and find the killer, they suddenly received a message at the station from an anonymous person claiming to be the killer who killed all these young men. At first, they assumed it was someone lying to stir up controversy, but they later discovered that the message detailed how these people were killed. Now, The person who sent this message was not one of the girl's relatives, acquaintances, or even her family. The sender of the message was the girl herself. In the message, the girl narrated her entire story with the 5 young men and explained all the details of the crimes she committed. She said in her message that she decided to take justice into her own hands after the law failed her. What did she say in the message? And what were the details that happened? Now the real story begins. This story began in mid-2004. There was a girl named Fatima Khalid. She wanted to move from the area of Wazan, where she lived with her family, to the capital. The goal was to find a suitable job, and at that time, the girl had graduated from the College of Pharmacy with her degree. She went to the capital naturally to seek her livelihood. Fatima did not know anything in that area, which made her walk and enter a suspicious street. The street had dangerous people, such as drug dealers and prostitutes. The car started to move away from the city, and all the way, Fatima was pleading and crying, saying to them, "Oh, good people, I am not from this area, and I am not one of the girls you are looking for. I am not one of the girls you have in mind." But one of them slapped her and said to her, "Shut up, not a word." Here, Fatima realized that there was no hope, and all she could do was focus on the road as she walked, hoping to memorize the way at least. They kept walking until they approached a dirt area. Here, unfortunately, they covered her eyes so she wouldn't see or memorize the road. Fatima began to count and estimate the distance the car had traveled since entering this dirt road, as it only walked a few minutes on this road before stopping. They took her out of the car and removed the cover from her eyes to find herself in a place very far from the city. Standing in front of an abandoned house, she was suddenly taken and brought to a room inside the house, where they destroyed the girl's life completely. They continued to assault her for 3 consecutive days in a brutal manner, and she remained in that place throughout this period without food or drink. After 3 days, they tied her up, covered her eyes, and took her away. She insisted that she would get her revenge on them, one by one. So, she went to the police station to report them. However, Fatima's encounter with the police that day was the biggest disappointment of her life. They began asking her for information that the girl did not have, such as the names of the individuals, the car's license plate number, or a medical report proving that she had been assaulted. It seemed that they received many reports from sex workers claiming similar things after disputes with their clients. The girl was shocked. She never expected such a response from the police. She withdrew her complaint and left the police station feeling broken. Here, Fatima confirmed, after contacting a lawyer who reiterated what the police had told her, that her rights would not be returned through the law and that she had to take her rights into her own hands. At that moment, Fatima's second personality began to emerge, preparing for revenge slowly. After 4 days of the incident, she started to gather her strength and went to the same path where the car had taken her on the day she was kidnapped. She took a taxi and tried to remember every detail, no matter how small, to lead her to the place where she was assaulted. She continued searching until she found a house on a farm in an abandoned area. This was the first clue in a desolate area with no other houses. When she looked at the place, bad memories and feelings of fear and terror flooded back. However, she would not back down before taking her revenge. She remembered the location well, but did not find any of those criminals there. So, Fatima returned and thought of another clever plan. She thought of tracking the street where she was kidnapped, specifically next to a shisha cafe she used to visit daily. She dressed in old clothes to pretend to be a beggar. One day, she happened to see one of the young men who had kidnapped her. She watched him until he got into his car and followed him in a taxi until she reached his house. She discovered he lived in a large villa near the road from where she was abducted. She memorized the address and left it to plan properly. The next day, she returned and stood in front of the villa door, knocking. Moments later, the same young man opened the door and was shocked to see her standing there, the one he had assaulted before. "How did you find my house?" he asked. She replied, "Listen, I know you're shocked, and I'm shocked too. I want to talk to you about what you did to me, and I don't want any fuss or scandals. But if you refuse, I swear I'll go to your family right now and scream to the world." He was from a prominent family, well known in the area, and thought, "Let me agree to discuss this." They got into the car to avoid drawing attention. She convinced him in her own way that she was interested in him. They headed to the abandoned house where she had been assaulted. Once inside, she spoke to him calmly. When she was sure he was relaxed and no longer suspicious, she pulled out pepper spray and sprayed it in his eyes and face. As he fell to the ground screaming, she quickly took out a sedative from her pocket and placed it on his nose. Then she searched for a rope and, after finding it, tied his hands and dragged him to the room where she had been assaulted. She placed him on the carpet after tearing his clothes and sat quietly, waiting for him to wake up. As soon as the young man, Murad, woke up, he was startled to see Fatima sitting in front of him, holding a knife in one hand and a voice recorder in the other. She said, "Listen, don't make this difficult for me. Give me all the information about the guys who were with you that night, or I swear I'll kill you right now." In that moment, he tried to negotiate, saying, "Please forgive me, I'll marry you." But she replied, "No way." In a swift motion, she stabbed him in the chest and abdomen, and blood began to flow in front of her. When he saw the blood pouring out, he screamed and confessed all the information about his friends. However, what Murad hadn't anticipated was that Fatima had already decided to kill him. She cut his artery and left him bleeding until he died, writing on a mirror in the room with his blood, "1 of 5. She then left the abandoned house after learning everything about his friends, their jobs, lives, and everything she wanted. The next day, Fatima went to the workplace of the second person that Murad had described to her, whose name was Isam. She spent each day observing his movements, when he left and when he returned, without him ever noticing her. She learned that Isam went every day to a coffee shop located on Alal Ben Abdallah Street at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. On that day, Fatima changed her appearance using makeup and pretended to be a street vendor selling products. She entered the cafe where Isam was and began to showcase her products. At the same time, she was watching Isam's movements and waiting for the waiter to bring him tea. When the waiter served Isam mint tea, she approached him and started showing him her products. With her cleverness, she managed to distract him and keep his focus on her. In a quick move and without him noticing, she slipped poison, colorless and tasteless, into his cup of tea, a very strong poison, then quietly left the cafe and watched from a distance. After a few minutes, Isam began to scream, and people gathered around him wanting to know what had happened. Meanwhile, Fatima discreetly entered the bathroom and wrote in her lipstick, 2 out of 5. Then she returned home as if nothing had happened and started calling the number of the third victim. He answered and was surprised by the caller, saying, "Hello, hello." She said to him, "I've been admiring you for a long time, and I would like to meet you and get to know each other." After changing her appearance with makeup, she went to him and left with him in the car. During that time, she asked him to stop by her friend's place, which was a way to lure him to a location far from the city. She then said, "Stop here," got out of the car, and pretended to wait for her friend, making sure no one was watching them. She returned to the car, approached from the other side where he was sitting, and knocked on the window. When he rolled it down, she took out a spray can from her pocket and sprayed it on his face and eyes until he was completely blinded, as the spray burns immediately. She went to a gas tank she had hidden among the trees, sprayed gasoline on him and the car, then took out a match and lit it. Before he died, she said to him, "I am the one you assaulted," and wrote on the car window, 3 out of 5. She then went to the fourth person, Khalid al-Matouk, whom she discovered through her investigations frequented a bar in the area. Using the same method, she dressed up and went to the bar. When it was reported that the young man in the hospital had confessed to what he and his friends had done, the news spread in all the newspapers across Morocco, and everyone learned about the girl who killed the young men who assaulted her. The fifth person then came forward in a psychological state, saying, "This girl is going to kill me," and he went and surrendered himself to the police out of fear of being killed by her. He confessed that he was one of the 5 who raped Fatima. Fatima learned that the fifth person had gone into hiding and fled Morocco before the police could identify her. In May 2005, a letter arrived at the chief of police's office stating, "Sir, I am the girl Fatima, who was raped by the 5 gang members. I executed my judgment against them after they destroyed my dreams and deprived me of returning to my city. Despite the pain I endured, I completed my studies. By the time this letter reaches you, my plane will have taken off to a faraway country, and I will not return to my homeland again." Fatima wrote this letter to prevent another innocent person from being accused who had nothing to do with the matter. After taking her revenge, Fatima completely disappeared. Now, in your opinion, was what Fatima did justified or not? I won't answer that. I'll leave the answer to you in the comments. And thus, the events of our story conclude. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to receive exclusive content.